what if I told you Canada almost went to war with Denmark over a tiny island in the middle of nowhere? No people, no trees, no buildings, just rocks and ice. And what was the weapon of choice in this international standoff? Whiskey. Yup, actual bottles of whiskey. Hey everyone, welcome back to Geography Facts, where we dig into the strange, hilarious, and mind-blowing sides of maps, borders, and global quirks. If that sounds like your thing, go ahead and subscribe right now. And ring the bell so you never miss a new geography mystery. Today, we're telling the story of Hans Island, a tiny rock in the Arctic Ocean that sparked one of the friendliest border disputes in world history. It's the tale of a cold, uninhabitable place, claimed by two friendly nations who fought not with bombs or guns, but with booze, flags, and good humor. Let's dive into the Whisky War. Hans Island is a 1.3 square kilometer rock, about the size of 230 football fields, stuck between Greenland, which belongs to Denmark, and Canada's Ellesmere Island in Nunavut. It sits smack in the middle of the Kennedy Channel, part of the Nares Strait, a cold, icy waterway between the two lands. Here's the kicker. The maritime border between Canada and Denmark runs right through the strait. But when the line was drawn, it was unclear who got Hans Island. So, naturally, both countries said, "It's mine." Why does anyone care about this rock? You might be wondering, why fight over a frozen island with no population, no trees, no wildlife, no oil, and no economic value? Well, it comes down to sovereignty. Even a barren rock can be used to extend maritime rights, like control over fishing areas or shipping routes. Also, in international law, if you give up even a small piece of land, it sets a precedent. So, when Denmark claimed it, Canada didn't want to back off, and vice versa. No one wanted to blink, but no one wanted to fight either. How the war started. The dispute began in the 1970s when Canada and Denmark were defining maritime borders in the Arctic. They reached an agreement on most of it, but Hans Island was left unsettled. Then, in the 1980s, Denmark planted a Danish flag on the island and left behind a bottle of Danish schnapps with a note that said, "Welcome to the Danish island." Not to be outdone, Canadian troops later visited the island, took down the Danish flag, raised a Canadian one, and left behind a bottle of Canadian whiskey. Crown Royal, of course. And so began the most Canadian-Danish conflict ever. A back and forth of booze and flags known as the Whisky War. The friendliest border dispute ever. Over the years, this ritual became a bit of a joke. Every few years, Danish or Canadian troops would land on Hans Island, remove the other side's flag, raise their own, and leave behind a bottle of national alcohol. It turned into a hilarious and unofficial tradition, a symbolic game of capture the flag meets happy hour. At one point, both countries even began announcing their visits, taking photos with the flags, and then posting them in the media. And the best part? Neither side was angry. It was all done with a wink, a smile, and maybe a little buzz. Modern resolution. The dispute quietly continued for decades, but with warming Arctic temperatures and increased international interest in polar routes, the two countries decided to finally settle it. In June 2022, Canada and Denmark reached an agreement to split the island in half. Literally. They drew a line right down the middle of Hans Island. Now, the island is shared. 50% Canada, 50% Denmark. It's one of the only land borders between the two countries, and perhaps the most peaceful border ever created. The treaty was signed with smiles, handshakes, and of course, a toast. Symbolism and what it means. The Hans Island story is more than just a quirky bit of Arctic trivia. It's a symbol of peaceful diplomacy in a world full of conflict. Two countries could have fought over land, but instead they chose humor, kindness, booze, and a shared understanding that the relationship mattered more than the rock. In fact, many experts call the Whisky War a model for resolving international disputes without violence, proving that even tiny islands can teach big lessons. Fun facts about the Whisky War. Here are some surprising tidbits that make this story even weirder. Hans Island is uninhabitable year-round due to ice, wind, and temperatures below -30 degrees Celsius. No country ever built anything there, not even a shed, just flags and booze. It's one of the only land disputes in history resolved with a drink, not a treaty, at least at first. Hans Island is named after Hans Hendrik, a Greenlandic Inuit guide who helped Arctic explorers in the 1800s. The resolution in 2022 made Canada and Denmark's land border just 1.28 kilometers long, one of the shortest in the world. So the next time someone tells you geography is boring, tell them about Canada's border with Denmark, the battle over a lifeless Arctic rock, and the only war in history fought entirely with whiskey and good manners. Let's raise a glass to Hans Island and to geography that makes you say, "Wait, what?" If you enjoyed this story, go ahead and like the video. Leave a comment with your favorite geography oddity and let us know. Which country do you think had the better drink? Denmark's schnapps or Canada's whiskey? And don't forget to subscribe to Geography Facts for more strange borders, forgotten places, and true stories from the edges of the map. There's a whole world out there, and it's a lot weirder than you think.